Well, good morning on this Monday. Happy Monday morning. I say happy. I'm dragging, but anyway, good Monday morning. A little bit of Primitive to get us started off. Primitive Quartet. Enjoy. I'm enjoying the coffee while I listen. Good morning, Miss Carmy. Hope you're doing good on this Monday. I'm trying to come alive. Searching for me. Amen, boys. Well, good Monday morning to you. This is Brother David Harrison Preacher Podcast. This is the Primitive Quartet. They're live at Trinity Baptist. This was their 40th anniversary. Been quite a few years ago. They've quit traveling now. But that's the Primitive's 40th anniversary over at my good friend, Brother Ralph Sexton's church when he was pastoring. Sing it, Jeff. Hey, Miss Amber. It takes time to pray. You stumble when you're down on your knees. Hey, Brother Derek, good to see you this morning on this Monday. Hope you're doing well. I'm getting there slowly. Yeah. I got my peepaw cup. Amen, boys. Sing it. Hope you're doing good, Brother Derek. Appreciate you being on here this Monday. Amen, he does. Thank God. Now when we call upon him, a present help he will be. For it's hard to stumble when you're down on your knees. Waiting for Leah to show up, and Brother James, and Darlene, and quite a few haven't got in yet. They'll show up. Good Lord sees. He'll hear your plea. It's hard to stumble when you're down on your knees. That's the truth. Hard to stumble when you're down on your knees. And he'll hear your plea. He'll hear your plea. It's hard to stumble. It's hard to stumble when you're down on your knees. Hard to do it. Well, that's the Primitive Quartet over in the Hominy Valley area, northern Asheville area. They're singing at Brother Ralph Sexton when he was pastoring at Trinity Baptist. His grandson's pastor there now, Brother Winston. Good church, great church. His dad pastored there for years, and Brother Ralph and I was working together when Ralph took over. We were in Salisbury in a tent meeting in Salisbury, North Carolina. He came in the motel, and he said, I got something to tell you. I said, what? He said, I'm going to take pastor's position at Trinity Baptist Church. And I said, oh, well. I said, man, that's a shock. I said, I always thought you'd be an evangelist. He said, well, I'm going to still do evangelism, but he said it'll be limited. And I said, yeah. I said, that's a big church. And I said, it'll get bigger once you take it, because everybody and their brother want to come once you're a pastor, because you got a good following. And he built it to a large church, and now his grandson took over Winston. And Ralph's pastor emeritus, and the church is huge. I guess 1,500, 2,000 maybe. And big church, good old-fashioned church. And they got Arthur Rice that sang with the Kingdom Heirs for years. Arthur and I go back all the way to the first tent meeting in Kannapolis. He was with the Kingsmen's Quartet. And then he quit there, and he and his wife were just traveling solo. And he and I sung around the tent together in 1983 in the first tent meeting. And then Arthur went with the Kingdom Heirs later and spent over 20 years, maybe 30 years with the Kingdom Heirs out at Dollywood. One of the best male vocalists in the business. And a couple of years ago, when Winston took over the church there, right before Ralph retired, Brother Arthur Rice took the position as music director at Trinity. And you're talking about a choir and a music program. And of course, the 11th Hour Singers, the girl that's with the 11th Hour Singers that's over that group, she's a member there, and she's got a voice, Lord of mercy. That woman can sing. And they've got some of the best singers. My friend Greg Lentz, that worked with me for 10 years, he and his wife are there. He does Hearts with Hands. He's over that ministry that Ralph started, which is like Samaritan's Purse. It helps in tornadoes and floods and hurricanes. Disaster relief, Christian disaster relief, Hearts with Hands, big ministry, millions and millions of dollars a year worth of stuff given away to needy areas. So all of my friends, a lot of people I know are in that church, and they got a lot of talent. And it's just an excellent church. And this is the Primitive singing there live for the 40th anniversary before they retired.
The everlasting Father, thou art my strength.
He's talking now. I'll let him go a little bit. We'll listen about 30 more seconds of it. See if I can run it ahead a little bit and pick up another song. There we go. There's Reagan. Reagan really, he's the left-handed guitar player. Oh, this is one of my favorites. Let's listen to a bit of it and I'll teach. Hey, Amy, this is one of my favorites. Thank God I did. I ain't going to hell. I bet there's 2,000 people there, and this looks like it. My heart, only fire I'll ever feel is burning in my heart. It's the only fire I ever feel. Ain't that a blessing?
Eternal life was given me
when I was born again. Thank God He did. My sin.
He left a spark that
satisfies my hungry soul's desire.
And that tiny flame that's burning now will keep
me from the fire. I escaped that awful place when I just saved my soul. And one hair upon my head will into that place go.
I don't have
To worry, my Savior took my part. Only fire I'll ever feel is burning in my heart. That never gets old. The Primitive Quartet, the only fire I'll ever feel is burning in my heart. That never gets old. Well, good Monday morning. Happy President's Day to you. It used to be called George Washington Day, and now it's Happy President's Day. I guess they celebrate George Washington, Abraham Lincoln. See, there was three. Was it two or three? I know it was Abraham Lincoln Day and George Washington. Seemed like there was another one. But anyway, it's President's Day now. So happy President's Day. If by some chance you are on vacation today, I know the mail, I don't think the mail is running, and the banks are closed. I believe some of them are. So it's a holiday in a lot of places, but a lot of businesses aren't closed. But it is a national holiday for civic workers and, banks and things like that. I'm not sure if the schools are open. I don't know. I don't have any children in school anymore, so I don't keep up with that. That's one thing I'm glad I'm over. Hey, Miss Kim, good to see you. It's Family Day here in Canada. I guess Family Day explains itself. I guess it's celebrating family, so that's good. But a lot of crazy dates. I know the Liberals put in a lot of dates, and Trump's tried to undo some of them, but not to much avail. But he did change the president's days back. There was something else too he changed. I forget what it was. He renamed a couple of them back to what it used to be. Sorry, I've got to finish my coffee. It's Monday. As you see the picture I put up on Facebook about the ugly-looking chicken, I'm smiling on the inside. I'm smiling on the inside this morning, but the outside, I didn't even comb my hair. I just threw a hat on. I said, Lord, please forgive me this morning. I need to get cleaned up for the podcast, but I didn't even comb my hair. I just put a hat on and just came. I'm forcing myself. I got up about 4:30 it was 5:30, about 5:15, 5:30. I woke up at 4:30. I forced myself to stay in bed till about 5:20. And finally at 5:30, I just had to get up. I was hurting so bad, so I got up and came downstairs. And you're drinking your coffee too, Leah? Well, cheers. I'm about to the bottom of mine. I made mine as full as my Keurig would allow it. I popped it, whatever it is, 10 ounces, 12 ounces, and it was up to the top. And I usually drink it black, but I put a little bit of caramel macchiato. My wife has that creamer, this caramel macchiato, and I put just a little bit in that, kind of turn the color. It's pretty good. When I go to Starbucks, I get caramel macchiato. Well, we're in Exodus chapter 20. While you're turning there, I hope you had a good day at church. If you got to go yesterday, we had a great day. I'm telling you, I've been praying real hard. I pray for my preacher every day, usually twice a day, sometimes 3 times, but I pray for him every day. I've been praying for God to touch him and anoint him afresh, and God to move in our church. And we're starting, we bought our books yesterday. My wife and I bought mine and her books. We're starting a 40-day prayer. March the 15th, our preacher's leaving for India on the 2nd of March. He'll be back on the 11th. When he comes back on that Sunday, the 15th, we're starting a 40-day session of prayer in the church. And Kenneth Kuykendall, I know him down in Georgia, wrote this years ago. It's a 40-day prayer journal. It has studies characters of the Bible and their prayer life. It has questions, answers, things to reflect on. He's calling the church into a 40-day prayer, which I am thrilled about. Because I've been praying for about a year that God would do something in our church to move us to pray more. We pray, and our church is geared toward prayer. We have Saturday morning prayer meeting, men's prayer meeting every Saturday, and then we have prayer on Wednesday night. We stop and the whole church prays for all of our list of missionaries and things. Our Wednesday night prayer handout is nothing but just prayer requests. We pray for our leaders, and it's different leaders every week. It's local leaders, our national leaders, the missionaries for that the next few days. He gives us on Sunday in our bulletin. It has a list of all the missionaries Sunday through Saturday, and then the next Sunday it starts over. So every day at lunch, when we have lunch, we pray for our missionary today at our church, and we have way over 100 missionaries we support. We had 2 missionaries last night. It was kind of odd to have 2, but he gave the whole service. But after the music, he gave it to the 2 missionaries, and we didn't broadcast it on live stream because of their mission field. And it's a mission field that is very unsafe, and to broadcast that to be seen in the country they're from could cause them harm. So we always do that. We have a lot of missionaries that come in from fields, and I won't name the name of the field so nobody will know. But the one missionary last night, Brother Ray, oh Lord, help me Jesus, I was absolutely stirred by him. One of the greatest missionaries I've ever heard testify. They've been on the field 14 years, I guess. We've been supporting them 14 years. This is the first time they've come back. And it's just amazing. He went to jail. He went to jail for his faith. They invaded his church, and 8 of his members, he and 7 of the members were arrested, put in jail. Finally, they all got released, and his visa was taken off, the visa of his kids. They couldn't leave the country, and finally, just through some connections and prayer, God got him out of the country, but now he can't go back in. They've stamped it that he is a danger to that country because of his preaching the gospel. It's amazing. I mean, you have so much to be thankful for, we that live in. Hey, Miss Joanna, I don't know if you was there last night, but Brother Ray, the missionary last night, I'm not saying where he's from, but his testimony stirred me. I've heard hundreds, I'd say thousands of missionaries I've met through my 50-some years. Been with missionaries. I've done mission conferences. I've done Macedonias. Our preacher is on the Macedonia Mission Board, and I've done their national conference. It was out in Missouri years ago. My wife and I was the main guest speaker. Brother Caldwell was president, of course, still is, and I was the main guest speaker for that meeting. So I know all the folks in the mission boards. Most of them I know of. But last night, his testimony was so amazing. And the other young man that is going back for his second term, he spent 5 years there, and he's going back also to us. Hey, Brother Gary. And it was just a wonderful night. The music yesterday was unbelievable. It was so anointed. They were people, I was hollering and clapping and praising God. The preacher, same way, and young men and people all over the church. About the noisiest services we had. I mean, it was really good. And you could feel the presence of God was so real. And our preacher preached yesterday morning out of Exodus. Go figure. He preached out of Exodus chapter 14. Wonderful, wonderful message. And just all day, I come home last night and we went to bed and we prayed before we went to sleep. We always pray at night. And I was just thanking God for the refreshing day. It'd been good to be in church yesterday. And I wrote my preacher several messages yesterday and told him how thrilled I was. God was answering my prayer, and he was just excited. I'm really burdened to keep praying for him and lift him up. God's got his hands on him. He's got a great vision for our church. He has a burden for souls. And I watched him last night when Brother Ray was testifying and talking about the ministry that he has. And he's up there crying. I mean, he has such a passion for souls and for missionaries, and our church is a mission church. And so it's been a good day. So we're starting off Monday. It's hard to believe Monday's back again. It's hard to believe. Good news is my book is at the printer. So my publisher sent me a message yesterday. He wanted a picture of me with my book, the last book I did. And we got the cover. You've seen the new cover, the black cover with the writing on the back. That is the cover for the new book. Gracie did a great job designing. My publisher said it's the best cover yet, and I agree. It really is sharp. It just portrays what depression is. Black, broken in the middle, it's just unbelievable. It speaks loudly. And I said, well, when I expect it to be ready to be for sale on Amazon. He said no more than a week. He said probably within a week. So maybe by the end of this week or the first of next week, my book will be on Amazon. You'll be able to purchase it through Amazon. I'm going to order probably a couple hundred, have shipped here to be able to sell at my church and be able to sell to other places and ship out to people who want to buy it from me. I don't know the price yet. We haven't set the price. I'm saying probably somewhere in the $15 range, $14, $15, $16, $17 range. Under $20, I would say for sure. It's going to be under $20. And it's going to be probably the greatest book God's let me write. And as soon as we get it, we're going to start setting up to do a Zoom call of the 12 sessions that I've got set up, and then I'm going to try to set up one at the church. If the pastor will give me a night that I can use it for 12 weeks, somewhere one of the rooms, either in the Family Life or the old sanctuary or wherever, and or in the basement of the mission, wherever, somewhere I can meet with ever how many people sign up from our area that want to be a part of this first sessions on depression. A 12-week session once a week. I've got the student manuals already drawn up. There's about 21 pages in the student manual. I've got the leader's guide for those that want to be able to teach it in their church or in their own sessions at their places. Then they'll be able to go through the program with me and see how I do it, and all the leader's guide, everything step by step. Then the textbook that's coming out. So I'm excited about it. It's going to be something I believe God's going to use as a great tool. So pray for that, and as soon as I know that it's ready and on Amazon, I will announce it, and you can get your copy shipped straight to you, or you can wait till I get them and ship them from here. Either one, it doesn't matter. Whatever the best way for you. Hey, Miss Legenda. Hey, Miss Cynthia, good to see you. Hope you're doing well. So let's go to Exodus chapter 20. We're in the chapter where God has given the law to Moses, the tables of stone. And we got down through verse 11. We stopped on the Sabbath, and I'm not going to go much farther to deal with the Sabbath, except to remind you again, the Sabbath did not start in Exodus 20 when God gave the Ten Commandments. The Sabbath was started in Genesis when God created the heavens and the earth and all that is. He said he labored 6 days. On the seventh day he labored, and he gave men the same instruction: 6 days you'll labor by the sweat of your face. On the seventh day you'll rest. So the Sabbath was set up as a day of rest for all humanity. And even the principle of rest was set up in the crop rotation in the year of Jubilee for Israel, that they were to plant in 7-year segments, and in the seventh segment of 7 years, 49, 7 times 7, 49. On the 50th year would be the year of Jubilee, when all the land would rest, and all the men that had been sold into because they had sold themselves for a debt, or they had lost their property that was given to them in their tribe, everything was returned that was taken away. It was a year of Jubilee. It was a year of restoration. It was a year of redemption. And God carried forth this same principle of Sabbath on into the year of Jubilee in the 7 sevens, the 7 years of sevens. But the crops were to rest. And even later on in our scientific studies of crop rotation, they were taught to rotate crops or to let the land rest. Instead of always taking away, take a year and let the crop rest, or let the land rest with something that was putting nutrition back in the land. And my daddy used to plant during the wintertime. He would plant winter peas or things like that that would put nutrition, nitrogen back in the land. So when he planted his corn in the spring, his land was full of nitrogen and vitamins, and he wasn't always taking from the land. He was putting nutrition. He would plant winter peas, and then when they'd get fully mature, he'd mow them down and let all that just go back into the ground like fertilizer. And it was a great principle that all farmers knew to do. Farmers just didn't plant. And of course, now they've got all kinds of chemicals and stuff to put on their land, always putting stuff back in it, so they don't have to have a year where the land lies dormant. But back then, they didn't have all that stuff. And I think it's even better to have a year of dormancy and just use the natural stuff like winter peas and even soybeans. Back then, we didn't use them a whole lot for crops. We used them for nitrogen to put back into the land. So there's a lot of principles here that we still practice today that came from God's instructions concerning the law of the Sabbath. But when you get into later in Exodus, especially into Leviticus, but over in Exodus 31, we'll get to the place where God begins to instruct Israel concerning the Sabbath as it relates to worship. So far, it's just a day of rest, but it becomes a day of worship that they set aside, and they offer sacrifices and do all the things religiously, and there's a bunch of do's and don'ts. But even this type of Sabbath, they weren't even supposed to go out of their house, their tent. They weren't supposed to gather manna on the Sabbath, not even go out of their tent. So this is a day of rest. So we'll leave it at that. And that's why even today, even though I don't worship on the Sabbath of Saturday, I do take the Saturday of Sabbath and try to rest on that Saturday and to just kind of slow down. And of course, now since I'm retired, I'm not busy traveling and preaching every day. And so I don't have a whole lot to rest from because I'm kind of over-rested. But my body has spent all these years traveling, and now I'm kind of like in my Jubilee time because my body is shot and I don't have the energy anymore. So I'm kind of in a long-term rest now. But when I was traveling, my Saturday was my day of rest with my family. It was a family day, and we just kind of hung out together and did nothing but just enjoy ourselves. We'd go eat out, we may go shop at the flea market and look for some things for the kids, just whatever we want to do, or go to the park and spend part of the day at the park. But it wasn't anything that was laborious. It was just enjoyment, and it was resting from the labors that I did all week, the preaching, the visiting, the work in the office, the counseling, the studies. I didn't do that on Saturday. Saturday was my day of rest with my family. And so I still practice that, my wife and I. Saturday is not a day we do a lot. Sometimes she cooks on Saturday for Sunday. Most times she starts on that on Friday, but sometimes on Saturday she'll start on Saturday nights. Like yesterday, we had a roast yesterday, and she had cooked it on Saturday, and it was all awesome. We had rice, and she had a beef roast. We bought it Sam's. We bought a couple of them in a pack, and pretty good sized roast. And it was carrots and onions and red potatoes, and all the seasoning, and the big pot of broth and all that. And she put a plate of rice, had rice underneath it, all that on top of it. Homemade biscuits, and opened up a biscuit, put all that broth on top, and just soaked in that biscuit, and we had just a full meal there, just in that roast and rice. So things like that she does on Saturday night, but she just gets it started. It takes her 30 minutes and she's done. Hey, Miss Chris. So anyway, we had a good meal, and have it today too. We're gonna have that for leftovers. So a lot of times she cooks, and we'll eat on it 2 or 3 days. So, but we take the Saturday as a day of rest, and but I don't do anything. We don't shop or go out and visit or do anything. We don't do anything planned, working. That's just kind of our day of Sabbath. So that's neither here nor there. You don't have to do it that way. I'm just telling you that was the principle God set up. So now let's get to this one. I started mentioning, and I ended with this on Friday, and I want to deal with it a little bit more in verse 12. And this is the only commandment God gave in the 10 that was with promise. And this is the commandment concerning honoring the parents. Verse number 12, honor thy father. Exodus chapter 20, verse 12. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. So I mentioned Friday that the promise of longevity, long days, is given to those who honor their parents. And the flip side of that, the negative is, and it's not written, but it's understood, that if God gives long days for honoring your parents, to dishonor them would shorten your days. I think that can be said, and I think that would be true, and I believe it is true. I believe many people have their days shortened because of their relationship with their parents. I believe because of the things they did to their parents or didn't do to their parents by dishonoring them. I believe that many of the people that die early die because of the promise in that verse that if you honor your parents, you'll have long days. Now, what does it mean to honor? We talked about that. I read the definition out of Strong's on Friday. It has a lot to do with giving respect to, placing value on them. It's not the same word for obedience. God didn't say obey your mom and daddy and you'll have long days. He did say in Ephesians, children, obey your parents, but that's not the word in the commandment. That's not the word in the commandment, because you come to a place in your life when you get old enough that you go out on your own as an adult, and obedience to your parents is no longer a necessity that's required, that you're under their authority. But you do have a responsibility to honor them all the days of your life. My dad, if he was living, wouldn't come into my house today and say, son, I don't think the way you're keeping your yard is right. You need to do it this way. I'd say, Dad, well, I appreciate your advice and I'll think about it, but that's my yard and I'll do it the way I want to. And I'd do it in a nice, polite, respectful, honoring way. But he wouldn't tell me, no, this is what you got to do. You got to do it this way. Or if I went and bought a Chevrolet, he said, son, you're doing wrong. He said, you need to buy a Ford. Well, I wouldn't have to obey him. Now, if he was paying for it, if he was paying for my vehicle, then he could pick out what kind of vehicle he wanted me to have. And I wouldn't have any say-so. I say, yes, sir, thank you. But if I'm paying for it, he's not going to tell me what to buy. Well, he can tell me, but I don't have to listen. I can heed his advice as to reasons why he thinks this is what I should do. But I don't have to obey him as being under his authority. But when you go on your own, you no longer are under his authority of obedience. But as long as you're alive, and even after they're dead, as long as you are alive, you have a responsibility to honor your parents while they're alive and honor their memory after they're gone. And the way you honor them after they're gone is to do the things that they taught you that was right, and to try to live a life of respect that would honor them, that if they were alive, they would say something like, I sure am proud of you. I sure am proud of you in the way that you, the man or the woman you've become. And for us that are raised in Christian homes, I was raised with a Christian mother, not with a Christian dad till right before he died he got saved. But I was raised in a home with a Christian mother, but many were not raised in a Christian home. But for you that were raised in a Christian home, you honor your father and mother by living for the Lord and following the precepts they established. So this word honor and this commandment that God gives to children to honor their parents is not just something that God just suggested. And I say this with all due respect. Much of today's society has taken the commandment of honoring your parents as a suggestion and not as a commandment. Did y'all hear what I said? This generation is so quick to put aside the principle of honoring your parents. My dad was mean. Hey, Jacob, good to see you. My dad was mean when he was a drunk before he got saved. And he was very unstable. Even after he got saved, he was in and out, up and down. He was very unstable. His lifestyle, the way he was raised. The Harrison family has a bad history for much part, alcohol and drinking and revelry and in and out of jail because of fighting and all that stuff. And sometimes our house on Friday nights and Saturday nights was about like Gunsmoke, in the Long Branch, fighting, cussing. It was something that a child shouldn't have to go through, neither should a wife. But we went through it. But my dad, even though he was not the best dad, I tried to honor him as the position he held of being my dad. Now, when he died, he got saved late, but he was in and out, up and down, very unstable, in church, out of church. And God took him out at an early age. He was only 58 years old when he died. Alcohol, heart attack, other physical problems he had took him out early. And I believe that was God's judgment on him because he was not a good example of what a Christian ought to be. And I believe he had done a lot of things to dishonor his godly mother. They say my grandmother Harrison was a wonderful woman. I knew her vaguely because I was very young when she died. I don't remember my grandpa Harrison, but everything I heard about him and even the pictures I've seen of him, he was very mean. Bootlegger, timber, sawmill, pulpwooder type guy. Tall, big old mustache, thick. Very, very mean. He wouldn't be given the Dad of the Year award, Father of the Year award. But my grandmother Harrison was really small, probably just maybe 4.5 feet tall, 4'5", 4'8", 4'10", very short, and hunched over, gray hair back in a bun, long hair put up in a bun. I can see her with her apron on, I can see her outside the log house there where she lived with the stone fireplace and the stone chimney. I can see the clothesline out past the chimney there, and I can see the little corn bin there where they had corn for the chickens and the hogs. And I can see the shed there where the wheat thresher was, the threshing machine. And I can see all those. I can see the live stream where the water came from. That you walk a little path and go, and just kind of down in that big hole was a body of water, and you could see it was always stirring because the water was coming out of the ground, and you'd basically rake the leaves off the top of it, big crawdads in it, and little critters, but you rake all that off, and there was always a dipper there and a bucket, and you just dip out the water to drink it, or dipper to fill up a bucket and not stir it up and try to make it muddy. It was always, clean water, fresh water, and it ran off, but there was a big basin there where it was able to kind of refresh itself. I remember going and getting water many times on a summer day, playing out there in the woods. I remember all that. She was a good woman, but my dad dishonored her by the lifestyle he lived. He was mean. His brother was, brothers were mean. He had a lot of brothers. I think there were about 8 brothers and 4 or 5 daughters. I think there was 11 or 12 kids. and a very, very wicked family. One of his brothers almost went to prison for life. His brother James, because of murder. He had murdered a man in a fight. And I think that's when my grandpa, Paul Harrison, lost his big tract of land. He had about 600 acres of land in Davidson County. And he had to borrow money on the land to pay a lawyer to keep my grandpa had to pay a lawyer, so he put his land up as collateral, borrowed money back during the Depression or right before the Depression hit, and borrowed money to keep his son James out of going to prison. And he kept him out of prison, but the Depression hit, he couldn't pay the bill back, and he lost 600 acres of land. Unbelievable. For what would have been probably hundreds, not thousands, probably $1,000 or less that he had to borrow for a lawyer back then in the 30s. Just real wicked family, and my dad. And so he dishonored it, so he didn't live to be long in years. And it's important, and I'm trying to catch my words right. I'm trying to say things right because I don't want to come across harsh, because this is very important to me. Honoring your father and mother is one of the most important commandments to us in our relationship with others. Honoring God and loving the Lord thy God with all the heart is the first commandment. And the second's, I can do it, love your neighbor as yourself. But when it comes to the commandments dealing with other men, women, probably the most important one is our relationship with our parents. Because this affects the years we live on the earth. And to dishonor, you say, what does it mean to dishonor? To cause your parents sorrow, to bring heartbreak to your parents constantly, living a wicked lifestyle, growing up, breaking their heart, going contrary to the way they taught you. That's one way, and that's usually what folks think of. To have a son that rebels and gets in drugs or alcohol and ends up in prison, that's dishonoring your parents. But I think there's even more things that are just as bad or worse, is for kids to grow up and have their own family and forget that their parents even exist. That's tough. And I could name off a bunch of people I know personally at our church and other churches I know that have children that never come around, never call, never find out how they are, and it's no big deal. It's no big deal. Go visit some nursing homes. Go in the nursing homes and talk to those old dads and moms in there and ask them a question. You got family? Yeah, I got children and grandchildren. Do they ever come see you? No. Do they ever send you a card? No, I don't think so. Do they ever send you a Christmas gift? No. How long's it been? I don't know, several years. Just about ever since I've been in. I hear that more than I want to remember. And that goes on in our country today more than ever. This generation today has become the most disconnected from their family generation that's ever lived in the history of man. There's never been a generation in modern times that had become more disconnected from their family than this generation. Why? Because of materialism is one thing. Kids grow up, have their own family, and they get caught up in things, money. And if it's not for themselves, they get caught up in their children. I pastor a church here in Tennessee, and a large portion of my congregation, their unfaithfulness to church was because of their children. They were in band, they had dance class, they played soccer, football, baseball, basketball, volleyball. They went to tournaments. It was just, they spent money for Little League, they spent money for this and money for that, and it was all about their kids, of giving them all the things they thought the world put in as important for them to be successful, so they could get a scholarship and go to a good school and come out and make big salaries. So church becomes second place, and then my family, I don't have time for them because I've got my children now and we've got a whole new life. I don't have time to go sit at my parents' house and spend the day with them. I don't have time to go help them do what they need done. They can get somebody to do it themselves. I got my kids to take care of. I got my business to run. You say, well, that's being cruel. It's being a fact. If it makes you mad, you're probably guilty. I'm thankful. When God called me to preach, it changed my lifestyle. And I didn't get to spend as much time with my brother and sister and their families as I wanted to. But I did not neglect my mother. After my daddy died, I did not neglect my mother. I may not have talked to her every day, but there weren't many days during the week that either I called her or she called me. We talked. And then I would ride down to see her. Sometimes I'd be out visiting or at the church and finish up something, go get some lunch. And I'd ride down before I went home. I'd go to see my mother. Or I'd ask her, say, you want to come stay a couple of days? I'd go pick her up. Or she'd drive up and say, drive on up. So I'll be home after a while. Come on up and spend a couple of days with us. We'd go down to her house and take her out to fish camp, whatever. I spent times, I told you I took her to Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge before she died and spent Christmas with her out there, and I don't regret that. I did things for her. I went down, she had to have a roof on her house, and my brother said, can you help me? I said, yeah. I said, I'm not physically able. I said, man alive, I said, I wouldn't do this for nobody but my mother. And we were up on the roof putting on shingles on her roof. And she knew that. She knew that's when I'd already had my back surgery. And I was not doing good. My back was in bad shape. But I told my brother, I said, I want you to know I wouldn't do this myself for my house. I'd hire somebody else. He said, well, I don't have the money. I said, I don't have it either. He said, Mama's got the money to buy the shingles, but she can't afford to get it done. I said, well, we'll do it. So me and him, and I think we had a couple others that helped us along, and I got up on her house and we did her shingles. But I wouldn't do that myself, but I did it for my mama. Because I wanted to honor her. And there's this principle. And I don't know what's happened. Hey, Brother Kim. I don't know what's happened. Hey, Brother Ambu. Ambu. I think it's Ambu. O-M-B-U-I. I've been talking to you on Messenger. Ambu. Good to see you on here this morning, Brother Dominic. I'll just say Brother Dominic, that's easier. And so, it's happened worse in this generation, and I see it more. And I hear kids talk about, I say, how long has it been since you've seen your daddy to talk to your daddy? It's been a while, I haven't talked to him. And I can't imagine, if my mother was living, I can't imagine going very many days and not talking to my mother. I can't imagine going for years and never seeing my mother. I might stop because it bothers me. I get angry, and because it's really it's sad. And I'm gonna say this: you take it for what it's worth. There's going to be a lot of people that's not going to live to be old, and the only reason is not because of cancer, not because of heart disease. That may be the reason it takes them out. It's not going to be because of a wicked lifestyle. It's going to be basically because of dishonoring your parents. Take it to the bank. I got chapter and verse to back it up. So enough of that. Now let's go to verse number 13. Y'all with me? Say amen. Okay. I heard you. Verse 13. Here's the basic rest of the 10 Commandments. They're real simple. God didn't make them complicated. He said, thou shalt not kill. Now, I want to get into something here, and this is very important. We understand the 10 Commandments God gave Moses. Those are plain. Thou shalt not kill. We know we're not supposed to take a gun and shoot somebody and kill somebody. Now, I'm not going to get into the argument about going to war, and if you're not supposed to kill anybody, then how can our soldiers go kill people from other countries in a battle and not be held guilty with bloody hands? Well, God told the people of Israel when they went into Canaan to destroy all the inhabitants. There is a thing about God giving permission and instructions in battle to defeat your enemies, because those enemies will rise up to destroy you. And the lands of Canaan had been promised to Abraham, and those inhabitants of Canaan were idolaters, they were evil, and God knew that if Israel did not destroy them, they would be the death of Israel. And they were, because they didn't destroy them all, and they were a thorn in their flesh all the days of Israel. So I'm not going to get into the thing about war and whether it's right or wrong, because war is in the Bible and there's always conflicts between nations. That'll be until Jesus comes. And that's not the killing God's talking about. God's talking about just a man getting in a fight, getting in a disagreement, arguing over a woman, arguing over a piece of land, arguing at a bar, getting half drunk or high on drugs, and getting in a fight and killing somebody. That's what God's murder, absolute murder. And God said, thou shalt not kill. That should not be something named among Christians. But when Jesus shows up in the New Testament, in the person of Jesus in the flesh, God incarnate, he begins to make some statements like this. Murder, killing your neighbor is wrong. But he goes on to say something like this. He said, if a man say, I love God, and hates his brother, he's a liar. For he that loveth not his brother whom he hath seen, how can he say he loved God whom he hadn't seen? So he's talking about loving your brother and saying you love God but hate your brother. And he said, if you hate your brother, you're a liar. And in one place, and I'm trying to find that, he says that it's murder. That if you hate your brother without a cause, it's murder. Let's see if I can find that right quick. I thought it was where I was at, but it's not there. So give me just a second, and I'll look in my concordance here, because I think I know where it is, but I'm not going to keep turning. So let's see here if it's in my Bible concordance here. No, it's not in here. I'm not sure where it is. But it is Jesus does take it and says if a man, let's see, is it 3:17? No, that's not it. And it's not 2:4. That's not it. That's not it. There's a verse that God says that if you hate your brother, that it's murder. And I can't remember where it is. I'll find it. I'll find it before I leave here. But all through the Bible, God makes it very clear that murder is not just about physical killing your brother, but it also is about if you hate your brother without a cause, it's the same as murder. So, we see the commandments take on a different, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, a different angle when we get to the New Testament under grace. Under the law, God just dealt with the sins of the flesh. But in the New Testament, he deals with the sins of the heart. So he says, if you hate your brother, you're guilty of murder. If somebody can find that while I'm talking, that would help me out a lot, because I'd love to read that verse, but I'm not going to waste time. 1 John 3:15. I thought it was in 1 John. I was all around it, but I just couldn't put my finger on it. 3:15. Whosoever hateth his brother is a murderer. Thank you. I knew it was in 1 John. I was looking. Thank you, Amy. I appreciate that so much. 1 John 3:15. Whoso hateth his brother is a murderer. I didn't say that. God did. Now in the Old Testament, God said, thou shalt not kill. So we understand that. Don't take a dagger. Don't take a knife. Don't take a gun. Don't take a stone. Don't choke a man to death. Don't kill a man. Don't run him over with your car. Don't push him over the cliff. Thank you, Miss Leah. Amy found it too. Don't do that. We know that's wrong. But 1 John 3:15 says, if you hate your brother, you're a murderer. If you sit in church and there's somebody you absolutely despise and hate, hate's a strong word. But if something happened to them today, you'd almost rejoice over it. You hate them. You almost wish something happens. If you've got that kind of attitude towards somebody, you're as guilty as a man that's serving death row because he killed a man. Sorry, that's the Bible. And it gets worse. Look back in Exodus 20, verse number 14. This one's good. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Okay? We know what's adultery when a man's unfaithful to his wife. Now, in the Bible, God uses the word adultery to refer to anyone that's unfaithful to their spouse in a marital relationship. The old timers used to preach that fornication was any type of sex before marriage and adultery was sex after marriage, outside your married vow. But that's not necessarily biblical. Adultery is being unfaithful or infidelity in marriage. You're married to your spouse, and while you're married to them, you have a relationship with somebody else. Now, I know we're in a society where that's not wrong anymore. You can be married to somebody and go spend a Saturday night with somebody else's wife, and it's no big deal. But it's a big deal to God. God calls it adultery. And God repeats that. Jesus repeats that in Matthew chapter 5 and verse 27. He said, you've heard that it was said by them of old time. Because people say, well, that was old time. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Yeah, that was back then. That's old stuff. We're not under that now. And a lot of Christians, so-called, use that. Well, that's old law. We're not under the law. Just because the law was fulfilled in Jesus Christ doesn't mean that you have a right to commit adultery. But Jesus goes on to say that not only the old-timers said, thou shalt not commit adultery, but in Matthew chapter 5 and verse 28, but I say unto you, that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her committeth adultery with her in his heart. Son, that'll knock the britches off a lot of men sitting in church. Well, I wouldn't be unfaithful to my wife. I've been married to the old battle axe all these years, and I ain't gonna even think about another woman. One woman's enough. One man's enough. Somebody asked my mama after my daddy died. Some man tried to date her, and she just laughed at him. Somebody asked my mama, said, Mama, Virginia, don't you want another man? She said, I had one, and one's enough. You'd have to know my mama. That was so. She said, one's enough. Amen to that. Well, I made a statement publicly probably 30 years ago, 40 years ago, after I was pastoring. I made a statement. I was preaching on my home for a series, and I made the statement. It's on tape, and I've said it probably 100 times since then, that I made a statement that if something happened to my wife and she were to pass away first, that I would never remarry. And I hold to that now. That's a vow I made to her and to God. Not because I'm somebody special and that I could deal with loneliness better than other men do. But God gave me my wife. And I'm not down on anybody that gets remarried. The first time you marry for love, and they say the second time is for fellowship. And I understand many women and men that lose their wives and spouses, they get married again, and it's perfectly fine. That's okay in the Bible. If you lose your wife or husband by death, then you have all biblical rights to remarry again. But as for me, God gave me my wife special. She was my special gift from God. She's been with me, be 53 years this December. And all that I've been through with her, let me say that again, all she's been through with me, I would not dare, hey, Miss Donna, I would not dare even think about putting another woman in that position to have to go through any of the things that my wife went through. And what woman would even know me at this age could even come into my life now and even have a part of my life, because I'm so sod in my ways, as my mama said. I'm sod in my ways. I'm independent. My wife is the only one that can satisfy every desire of my heart. Not just physically, just she and I, we're older now, and we don't have the same desires we had when we were young. But we just I hugged her the other morning. I think it was Saturday, or it was Saturday. She's in the kitchen getting breakfast. She made breakfast Saturday morning. I told her, she said, I said, I want breakfast today. She's making the roast for yesterday. I said, I'd like to have breakfast. And I told her what I wanted. And she's in there cooking, and she was frying sausage. I ain't had any sausage, and it's been a while. And we like Jimmy Dean sausage. And she was just taking some out of the pan. I grabbed a piece, and I said, there's nothing better than sausage when it first comes out of the frying pan. And I picked up a piece, and I gave her a bite, and I ate the rest of it. And she said, boy, that's good. I said, that is. And I hugged her, and I said, boy, things have changed in 50-some years. And she said, yeah. She said, it's just me and you. I said, yeah. I said, you're all I got. Beside God, you're all I got, just me and you. And that's enough for us. We do everything together. We sit in our living room at night together, watching TV. She's got her phone, I got mine. She may be playing a game, or she may be listening to a message. I've got my phone, and we're sitting there, and we talk. We watch TV. We watch jewelry television. She sees something she likes, I buy it for her. We go out to the store together. Everything we do together. We go to church, we sit together, we go to class together, we do everything together. And I couldn't even imagine anybody else trying to take her place. So I made that commitment to her. But that's my vow, that's not yours. But I know some folks, once they've had, one's enough. One experience of a life of love is enough to take me to heaven. That's what I said that day from the pulpit. The love I've had with my wife is enough to get me to heaven. I could live the rest of the way on what I've had. It's been the best 52 years of anybody's imagination. What we've been able to do together, experience together, the love I have for her is so strong today. And it's not sexual. It's not physical. That's not the love I'm talking about. We're one. And when you get married, it's not 50-50, it's 100%. She has all of me. Everything, all of my being. And I have all of her. She's mine. She's mine. She's mine. Her body, her mind, everything is mine. She's mine. Alone. Nobody can touch her. She's my bride. And we still feel that way. We don't argue. You can stay with us. You can stay with us for a year. This house is never full of arguments. Oh, we'll pick at each other once in a while and get to aggravating each other. I pick at her and she don't like to be picked at. We don't get mad. We don't argue. We don't fuss. We may have something we disagree on, but we talk it out. And if we disagree, we just say, okay, we'll just have to pray about it. But there's never an argument in this house. It's peaceful. We worked 52 years on that. And I wouldn't dare disrupt my life when somebody else would come in that wouldn't live up to her standard and my standard and live in hell the rest of my life with somebody that maybe is a good person, but not the person that God gave for me. So this adultery thing, but in the Bible, most folks think adultery is just infidelity in marriage and fornication is just sex before marriage. But the word fornication, do some research on it. The word fornication in the New Testament is the word porneo in the Greek. Yes, it's the word we get our word pornography. So in most cases in the New Testament, when God deals with fornication, he's not talking about sins before marriage. Not talking about sex before marriage. He's talking about all types of sexual sin, which would include pornography. For a young person to be looking at pornography, that's fornication. In his heart, with his eyes, that's fornication. To be lusting after a woman in his heart, he's already committed adultery and fornication in his heart. And God takes the commandments of Exodus in the New Testament to another level. Whereas in the Old Testament, it was the sins of the flesh. But in the New Testament, it goes to the sins of the heart. Does that make sense? So it's more difficult. There's more requirements of us in the New Testament under grace. Because not only am I not to commit adultery in the flesh, I'm not to look at somebody else's wife or some other woman and think, boy, what it'd be to be with her. Man, I'd love to spend the night with her. That's adultery. I was in Sunday school yesterday, and our Sunday school teacher was telling about, he goes to the gym twice a week. He's not quite as old as I am. He goes twice a week to work out, and it's with old folks. But he said the other day, this young lady come in dressed like young women do when they go in the gym. I don't know. I've never worked out in the gym, so I guess he's talking about in tight tights and all that. And he said, when I'm there with all the old men and women, he said, my eyes never look at them. But he said, the whole time I was there and she came in, he said, I kept finding myself looking that way. He was laughing. He said, I'm flesh. And he said, I finally just had to leave. It's the first time that happened when he was there. My wife said, I don't think I'd told that. Well, I wouldn't have either. But I know what he's saying, because our flesh is weak. But honestly, the sins of the heart is just as serious. To commit adultery in your heart is just as serious as doing it in the flesh. I got to go on. Verse 14. Man, it's already 10 o'clock. God, forgive me. Oh, can I finish a little bit more? I haven't even got through 3 verses this morning. Verse 14, thou shalt not commit adultery. Verse 15, thou shalt not steal. Okay, that's pretty simple. Thou shalt not steal. Commandment number 8. So, I'm not to go into a store and shoplift. I'm not to take something from somebody that doesn't belong to me. Yes, Donnie, you understand. Thank you for sharing that. He went to be with the Lord 2 years ago. So you understand. You're probably experiencing loneliness, but to replace him would be impossible. I mean, I know that. And so verse 15, thou shalt not steal. So we understand stealing. I don't have to go into great detail about stealing. Taking something that does not belong to you. Now, there is a verse in the Bible, or verses in the Bible, that deals with stealing, but it's not stealing from your neighbor. I think you know where I'm going. Verse 8 of Malachi chapter 3. Will a man rob God? I was preaching one time. It's funny now, church is packed full, hundreds of people. I was preaching on tithing and giving. I was preaching on giving, not just tithing, but giving. And I took my billfold out, and I threw my billfold to my wife on the second row on the right side. I said, honey, hold that while I'm preaching. And everybody's looking at me, why? I said, I'm in a church with crooks in it and thieves. I said, if these people rob God, they may rob me, so hold my billfold till I get done. And people started busting out laughing, but some were not laughing. But I was being honest. If you will rob God, you'd rob your neighbor. Will a man rob God? Malachi said, yet you have robbed me. But you say, wherein have we robbed thee? He says, in tithes and offerings. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to hang up the phone. We'll come back tomorrow. Some of you hope will come back. If you are saved, profess to be saved, and you have a church, a local church, and you're not tithing to the Lord, you're guilty of robbing God. And you're not just guilty of Malachi 3, but you're guilty of Exodus 20:15. Thou shalt not steal. And the greatest stealing of all is robbing God. If you would rob God, you wouldn't have a problem standing in Walmart and the girl give you back $10 too much and walking out the door and never say a word. My wife, it hasn't been too many months ago, my wife had bought some stuff at Dollar General, and she came out and got home, and she realized it was either $1 or $2 she had too much change. And she went back to the store and gave the cashier the money back that she didn't, but it wasn't hers. You say, I never drove back for $1. My wife did, because it was stealing. It wasn't her mistake, but she caught it. And she, at that moment, she had the opportunity to say, well, nobody knows, not even my husband knows. I can get by with this, no big deal, just $1. Or to do right and have God's blessing on her. Well, you don't know my wife. If it had been 5 cents, she'd have gone back. Because if it ain't hers, she ain't taking it. Do not steal. Thou shalt not steal. But the greatest robbing of all is robbing God. I've always tried to, even more so now in my old age, when I figure up the tithes of whatever's come in, and by I mean coming in, if I make profits off a book, if I sell 2 books, if somebody sends me a love offering, $25 check, somebody gives me a $100 bill in my, whatever, I try to keep a record of everything that comes in. And if somebody gives me a $10 bill, I don't have to report that to the IRS because that's just a gift. But I report it to God and pay tithes off of it. And the way I make sure that I always give enough is whatever my tithes equal to 10%, then I always give more. And then above that, we give a set amount every month to missions, which is over and above our tithes. And I'm not going to tell you how much, but it's not $5 or $10. It's a lot for us retired folks. But I give that once a month to our missions. And then I give, usually when the offering goes around, I'll put something in, if it ain't $5, $10. And a lot of missionaries come through, I shake their hand and put something in their hand. I'm not bragging on that, but I've just learned to give. And most every time I give over above what I'm able, God gives it back, multiplied. And it's not that I'm doing it to get back, but I give to get so I can give again. Because I know as long as I keep giving, I keep the channel of blessing open. God says, if you give, I'll open up the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing you can't contain. So I know when I'm giving, just because I'm in obedience and I'm going above what God demanded, that God has to automatically bless me because that's His promise. I'm not doing it because to get a blessing, but I know that I'm going to get a blessing. And by getting a blessing, that gives me the ability to give more. My wife and I, this past month, we had some extra come in, this check from this dear gentleman in another part of the country that sent us a check unexpectedly, and it was a large check. And when I put my tithes in the offering a couple of weeks ago for the month, we were out that one Sunday when it snowed, so I got to put it in the last Sunday. And it was the biggest tithing check I'd had, or tithing gift I'd had in a long time, plus my faith promise. And I stood at the kitchen floor, went out the door, and I pulled my tithe. I said, this is what it ended up being. She said, oh boy, she said, we get to give back today. She just gets thrilled over giving, and I do too. Every time it comes by, I drop it in the offering and say, praise God. And then last night to hear that missionary that we've been supporting for 14 years, and knowing that what I give is supporting somebody like him that's in a place I can't go, doing what I can't do. But I got a part of that. That's why we give. Because we're all one body, and what we do helps the body function. And most folks never get that. So if you're a Christian sitting in church and you're not taking 10% out of what God's given you plus an offering, you're robbing God. Shame on you. Shame on you. Well, probably some of you won't come back tomorrow. I hope you will. But I love you. But it's the truth. And I'm not saying this to your hurt. I'm saying this to your help. Because when you start learning to give, that's when God can start blessing you. God will bless you just because He's God. The Bible says it rains on the just and the unjust. God bless the unjust just because He's God. But you want the real blessing of God? Learn to give. It's an obedience that we're responsible for. But it is an access to a blessing that we know nothing about until we learn to give sacrificially. He says, let a man give. He said, give cheerfully. That's hilariously. Laugh. Give until you laugh about it. I laugh about it. I look at how much God lets me give, and I look at how much we bring in every month, and I say, this is ridiculous. How are we giving this? And I said, this don't even make sense. This doesn't make sense. That we're giving this much, making this much, fixed income, Social Security people, and God's letting us give this. And I just laugh. I say, Lord, you're so good, because we're giving almost as much now, if not more than we were when I was traveling full time. God's blessing. And I don't have a lot of money. My account's low. It's probably the lowest this month it's been in a long time. I don't have a whole lot of cash on hand. It's just about broke. My wife, her Social Security comes in Wednesday. Mine comes in next week. We got everything we need, but I'm not complaining because God's been good. I trust Him. My life is His. I am in His hands. Man, life has already been an hour and 10 minutes. Oh, Lord, forgive me for going over time. Forgive me, I'm sorry, but I just had to finish that. So we got through about 3 or 4 verses today. He's getting where I told you it's going to be a long time in chapter 20. It's just the nature of the beast because there's so much in this chapter. I cannot do it justice and rush through it. So, love you. Thank you for watching today. Enjoy your Monday. Happy President's Day. If you're doing anything special, be careful when you're out and about. If you're staying home, enjoy your day at home. Pray for us. Pray for me and my wife. We're both just not feeling good these days. I'm not feeling good at all. I got a lot going on. I got a doctor's appointment Wednesday in connection with my back surgery. I've got to have this appointment. If this goes good, then they'll start working toward the trial test on the back stimulator, spinal stimulator. And then if it works, then I'll have the date set for the surgery. I've got a cancer scan coming up on the 12th of March. And then I've got my eye appointment 2 days before that. Then I've got a cancer doctor appointment after I have my scan. So I've got a lot of doctor's appointments coming up in the next little while. So just say a prayer for me. Just pray for my wife, and she's still not feeling well. We both are not 100%. Not sure what's going on, but it is what it is. Probably just a lot of miles wearing out. We wear our bodies out for Jesus, and I'm not complaining. But just pray God give us strength and help us. And I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing as long as I'm able. And I hope you have a good day, Lord willing. I'll be back in the morning at 9 o'clock. Thank you so much.